So I want to tell you, first of all, a little bit about the book of Job. Job is a parable, an ancient legend, and it's written in a very unusual form of Hebrew. And Job means patience in suffering. Now, I downloaded all sorts of different quotes from people from the 1800s, people from the 1900s, people from this century, talking about suffering and how suffering gives us character. But it's not something we like to do. And it's certainly much easier to have faith when you're seeing other people suffer and how you can help them than to have faith when we ourselves are suffering. And we all suffer. We suffer sometimes continuously with certain things. There are times in our lives when we just suffer. There are times when we're prepared for suffering and times when we're utterly unprepared for suffering. But suffering empowers us to become strong. This is basically what the book of Job is about, other than Job needed to learn to rely on God and not on himself. And that's another thing that we do. We like to rely on ourselves, and we give all glory to God when things go right. But sometimes we castigate ourselves when things don't go right, and also we blame God when things don't go right. And so I'm thinking about some things that are going on in America, some things that are going on around the world. And I was thinking first and foremost about Indonesia and the suffering that they are experiencing because, once again, here's another earthquake and then a tsunami. Now, and I think there were tornadoes too. They have so little. Many of them have so little. And when I think of myself being in that situation, there's places that I can go and be given the food I need or the care that I need, the shelter that I need. But for them, everything is devastated. I think of North and South Carolina. Think of any of the hurricanes that have come. And the suffering that comes from that, the destruction of our lives. Because we often focus on stuff. We often focus on what's around us for us to feel comfortable in our lives. But yet, there are times when we can lose absolutely everything. And where do we go from there? Where do we go? I heard a story recently, actually when I was in Florida on vacation. My daughter-in-law shared this, and I don't know the source, but it was very profound for me. There was a young girl she read that needed a blood transfusion, and she needed it right away. And there was none of her blood type available. And this was a very serious situation. And her brother, her younger brother, her little brother, matched her blood type. And so her family went to him and asked him if he would be willing to give his sister a blood transfusion. And he thought about it for a while, and he was scared and wanted to know the process of how this thing would happen. But then finally he said, yes, I'll do this for her. And so the blood transfusion was made, and it was complete. And a little after that, how are you doing, to the son. And he said, well, when am I going to die? Think about that for a minute. When am I going to die? he had thought that by giving his sister his blood, he would die because of that. That's pretty amazing to think about that. You know, of course, we know that he's not going to die from giving a blood transfusion, but in his young mind, that's what he thought. And he was willing to sacrifice his life for his sister. I heard another story this morning that really, really touched me about a guy in, I'm not sure whether it was North or South Carolina or near there, that manages a hotel or owns a hotel. And he is bringing in the homeless, those that are poor, and having them stay at his hotel for free, and providing them with food. And people all around him are coming in bringing diapers, they're bringing food, they're bringing all these things to help out. And these people are saying, there was no place else that we could have gone. We are so grateful. And so there's all these wonderful, wonderful things happening around the world in the midst of suffering. There's some awful things that are happening, yeah, don't get me wrong. But there's some wonderful, wonderful things happening. And so I was thinking too of what he said. My mother taught me, love thy neighbor. Love thy neighbor. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just following that. And we know who teaches us that. But when we're suffering ourselves, sometimes it can be very hard to love our neighbor because we want to take care of ourselves. But as in Job, in thinking about World Communion Sunday, all the things that happened to Job, everything taken away from Job except his life, his health, his family, his wealth. But that's not what it's all about. In all of the suffering, he relied on God. His faith was strong. He wasn't perfect, but his faith was strong. And in the Hebrews, I'm thinking so much about what Jesus did. Jesus was made a little lower than the angels. The mind and the heart of God in this man, loving us so, so, so much. Taking on our sin in his death, and then overcoming this death through his resurrection. That's where our focus needs to be. When we can focus ourselves there and not step away from the religious part, because religion often can get in the way of things. But when we can step away from that, and even in going through the motions, the rituals, what we do on a regular basis to worship God and to celebrate God, and remember that we are God's. We belong to God. And focus entirely on God. No matter the suffering that is in our lives, no matter the pain that is going on, no matter the misunderstanding, disunderstanding of division, that's not God. None of that is God. God is love. Martha Hawthorne, and she's the crop walk matriarch every year. And she gets us going for the crop walk. And one thing, and she's been across the world more than once. And something she has said often, that when these women are walking up to 10 miles to get water to bring back to their families, or whatever they're doing, they're singing. They're singing. They're giving praise to God. And that's hard for us to imagine. Even us doing 1 3/4 miles or whatever it was last week, it was hard for me to imagine as I'm huffing and puffing coming up that final hill, also carrying a 30-pound thing of water or whatever, on my shoulders, and singing praise to God. So, God, why can't I have water right where I need it? Or a toilet or whatever. But no. They're singing praise to God. We don't want catastrophes in our lives. We won't want difficulties, illness, whatever in our lives. But it's going to come. And what doesn't kill us strengthens us, especially when we can focus on love. When we can focus on who God is and who we are in God. Then we are able to step forth and create. We are able to step forth and help. We are able to step beyond the division in this country and in this world, and to be there for one another. And we are able to love and embrace people who are different from us, who have different things, who suffer from disabilities, who are different, that we don't understand. Because every single one of us is different. Every single one of us falls short. Right after church at 12 o'clock, we're having a luncheon, and then we're going to talk about becoming open and affirming. And how does it affect you, the congregation? How is it going to impact our church? And there are so many different facets about becoming open and affirming. Do you accept me for who I am and for what I look like and for my ideas that are different from you? Do you accept each other? Do you accept those that you don't understand? Do you accept those who have nothing and need help? So, it's all about faith. What do I put my faith in? Who is the one that I put my faith in? Do I put my faith in things? Do I put my faith in other people? Do I put my faith in what I have, in shelter? What do I put my faith in? Or do I surrender myself and lose my life by surrendering it? Lose the old way in order to pick up a new life and become a new creation as God's child. Amen. Let us stand and sing together.